All right, the show rolls on despite the alarm a little bit earlier. I thought that I got through most of what I wanted to talk about in that video about Deshaun Watson's potential suspension, what that might mean for Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe the Cleveland Browns will be interested. Maybe the Carolina Panthers still are interested. My main point is that stuff will start to materialize and roll along once Garoppolo's healthy and throwing. That's probably going to happen within the next couple of weeks. And then once the trade market for quarterbacks has a chance to break the slog and start moving. And to break the slog, stuff has to happen. Guys have to get hurt. Guys can get in trouble like Deshaun Watson. We'll see. Potential landing spots for Jimmy Garoppolo that don't exist tangibly right now might still open up on the horizon. So that's all that I was talking about a little bit earlier. And then the alarm hit, thought there was a fire, had to stop the video. That actually happened one other time to me doing one of these YouTube lives. And it happened back after the 49ers beat the Packers in the snow globe game at Lambeau Field. Remember how freezing cold it was? That was an epic victory. Went down immediately into 49ers lore. Those of you just coming in, those of you, who have subscribed in the last several weeks, last few months that weren't around back then, on that glorious January night when I had to stay in Appleton, Wisconsin at the sketchiest motel of all time, where I just, had a sink in the room. You didn't even go into the bathroom. The sink was sitting there right next to the bed. It was like a cell. It was crazy. But anyway, it was so bad. The walls were so thin that I couldn't sleep there. I mean, between the sketchiness of the motel and the adrenaline rush that was that game, I just did YouTube lives all night. And it was worth it because everybody wanted that content about 49ers Packers. Anyway, later that week, there was a fire alarm that went off in the building that I was in, not in the sketchy motel anymore, right during one of the YouTube lives. And we had a lot of viewership that week because the 49ers were on their way to the NFC Championship game after beating the Packers in the snow at Lambeau Field. So a lot of people saw the fire alarm. So those of you who are just joining the channel now, love everybody. You came a little bit late. That's fine. We still accept all comers, and we're just a little bit over 15,000. So you can go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and go back to January to watch the fire alarm interrupt one of the videos. And while you're back, in that stretch of time, Margot's at the grocery store, by the way. She asked, what should she get from the grocery store? She's cooking dinner tonight. So let me know, and I could let her know during the course of this show. Then maybe we could do a little dinner with Lombardi, see what's being made for dinner tonight. So let me know over here on the chat section what you want for dinner, what you want to see for dinner on the channel. But anyway, back to January. If you like this video, if you subscribe to the channel, you can go along and watch some of that old stuff from the glory days of the 49ers run of the playoffs. And while you're there, you'll be able to see my Instagram or YouTube live after the 49ers beat the Packers from the press box at Lambeau Field. Those are really good memories because I was writing for The Athletic, very involved article. I wanted to make it good because it was such a monumental win for the 49ers. It was piercing through the snow globe, I think was the headline, something like that. And then I look up after I found my article late at night. We're on Central Time, and boom, nobody is in the press box. And the stadium lights are still on. And by this point, the field at Lambeau is completely white, covered with snow. And I say, well, I got to set up the camera looking back down at me in the press box with the field in the background. And this is how I have to do my post-game live. It was too good of an opportunity to pass up. Now, I still regret not doing an Instagram live with my phone from the field at Lambeau at 2 or 3 a.m. Empty field, lights still on, in the snow. At the time, I was dissuaded by the fact that I could have frozen to death because it was like negative 12 degrees outside. And who knows if I would have been able to find an exit from the field, being the only one in all of Lambeau at that late hour. So my survival instincts, my fatigue, all that kicked in. But to this day, I'm kicking myself for not doing the video from the middle of Lambeau Field in the cold, doing an additional video, plus in addition to the one, that I did in the press box with the field in the background. But the point is, I try to be dedicated to this, try to give you guys as much content as possible. So like the video, sub to the channel, go back to January, you got to scroll back a lot and find that video of me in the Lambeau Field press box. I had a lot of fun with that one. And, I hope it's worth your subscription. Anyway, any food? Oh, here we go. James says ribeye tapas with roasted asparagus and broccoli. All right, we could let Margot know to buy ribeye tapas with roasted asparagus and broccoli. Sounds fancy. Sounds really good. Carne asada, always a good pick. Two recommendations. So if any more come across, we'll discuss some more food. Anyway, we're going to talk about the 49ers linebacker position today. As you might know, we started with the DBs yesterday. I've gone through one position group already. This is number 2. We're going to go through all of them over the course of the next few days to help bridge the gap between now and the start of 49ers training camp. Just a quick look in to each position group after the offseason of acquisitions and the offseason program on the practice field. So the question is, what do we expect from the 49ers linebacker position in 2022? Well, I'm going to share State of the 49ers, the linebacker article. This comes from back a few months ago. This comes from before the offseason program and before the 49ers did a whole lot of acquisitions. And you'll see that we talked about Fred Warner and the fact that Fred Warner got healthy as the season went along. And that was good for the 49ers because Warner peaked at the right time. We saw him with that big strip in the divisional playoffs, that game against the Packers that I was talking about, that I thought really reversed course of that game. Green Bay was humming early. The 49ers offense couldn't get going early in the cold. Then Fred Warner's strip came, and then the 49ers offense started putting some momentum together. And then they grabbed control of that game down the stretch, and they obviously escaped Lambeau Field with that huge win. Well, Fred Warner was a huge part of it. That might be him there on the field at Lambeau. And as we scroll down here, we can take a look at what the 49ers linebackers did from a performance aspect in 2022. Blue is good, red is bad. My first point here is that San Francisco is likely going to have to make a choice between Fred Warner. No, not between Fred Warner's. He just got married, by the way, this past weekend. Speaking of getting locked down, well, Fred Warner got locked down by the 49ers. Obviously, he is married this past weekend, so congratulations to him. His wife, Sydney, got married on the same day that my fiance's sister got married, so a lot of weddings this past weekend. But the big decision for the 49ers moving forward projects to be Dre Greenlaw or Azeez Al-Shaair, and that's going to be entering the offseason of 2023 because both are about to play on the final years of their rookie contracts, and both have been really good players for the 49ers who project to make a whole lot more money than they're currently making after this next season. So assuming that both play healthy or relatively healthy 2022 slates, the 49ers, probably due to cap constraints, are going to be looking at a situation in which they can only pay one of them. So if you look at the performance of the linebackers last year, you can see that Al-Shaair had many more tackles than Dre Greenlaw because it wasn't a healthy season for Dre. So it's important, first and foremost, that Dre Greenlaw stays on the field more than he did in 2021. Al-Shaair was able to essentially usurp him for most of that year in the 49ers strong side linebacker spot, or the weak side linebacker spot, I guess I should say. That's the second linebacker behind the mic, behind Fred Warner on the field. Had more tackles, but, you know, as you see from a performative standpoint, Dre Greenlaw has more blue in his row. Had a lower missed tackle rate, did a little bit better in coverage if you're going to measure snaps per, reception given up, and did better in pass coverage when you look at passer rating on throws into his coverage. Now, Al-Shaair did some good stuff as well. Let's not pretend that he had a bad year. It just wasn't as good from a performative standpoint as Dre Greenlaw's, but from an overall standpoint, Azeez Al-Shaair was on the field much, much more because he didn't get hurt. So when you talk about availability being the best ability, if you fast forward a year and you duplicate it, the seasons that both Azeez Al-Shaair and Dre Greenlaw had in 2021 into 2022, well, then you're probably looking at the 49ers looking to pay Azeez Al-Shaair moving into 2023 and letting Dre Greenlaw walk. But there's still a whole lot of football left to be played, and the roles could easily reverse. You could easily see Dre Greenlaw have the healthier 2022, and that might change the 49ers thought process on things. But if they both have good, long, healthy years, and if they both put up good numbers behind Fred Warner here in this coming season, the 49ers will indeed have a tough decision to make. All right, now I'm going to pop open the roster because this is where player acquisition comes in. So you can take a look at the 49ers depth chart at linebacker. I have it highlighted here for you in blue, maybe even make it a little bit bigger on that screen. As you see the front line for the 49ers, Warner, Greenlaw, and Al-Shaair. Then they made a signing, and that's Oren Burks. You have him there on the second string, depth one there with Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. Oren Burks is going to add more thump to a unit that's heavy, that's really been heavy on DB converts. So the 49ers have a type at linebacker, right? You look at Fred Warner, he was essentially a DB in college at BYU. He was playing kind of a star slot position where he had to go out and cover. And yeah, he's big for coverage. That's what makes Fred Warner so great and so special, is that he brings the size and the thump of an interior linebacker, but he can also cover guys, but he still had that coverage background. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles on this team, he was a safety in college at Arizona, so he comes from the safety background. Go to Dre Greenlaw. Arkansas swears, and Dre Greenlaw obviously vouches for this, that based on the tracker and his shoulder pads in college, he was the fastest defender on Arkansas's team. And he played some quarterback in high school, plus he played some quarterback in high school. So Dre Greenlaw comes from a super athletic background, obviously is bulked up, now lays down some thump as a linebacker. So the 49ers across the board have a type, and that extends even to some of the players that are no longer with them. Marcel Harris, for example, former safety, was a linebacker here in his last season with the 49ers, now no longer with the 49ers, but you can still see how there's a theme in the linebacker room of the 49ers, emphasizing coverage to the point where they're actually bringing in former DBs to be linebackers. Well, Oren Burks is going to give them a little more thump. And ironically, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, as I talk about this, Oren Burks, too, was a former defensive back. He was a safety at Vanderbilt here in Nashville, Tennessee. But throughout his entire NFL career, and that was 3 years with the Green Bay Packers, Oren Burks was a linebacker. And he's got some serious size and ability to deliver some thump in him, because he's been able to last on special teams, which isn't just for anybody. You got to fly down the field. You have to have the speed component on special teams. And then you have to be able to lay the wood, dish out contact. So you have to be pretty sturdy. And one thing that the 49ers are excited about regarding their signing of Oren Burks is that he will be able to add a little bit of muscle that they thought might have been lacking in the second string of the linebacker core, in the Marcel Harris world of the linebacker core last year. So when either Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, or Azeez Al-Shaair are unavailable, you have to go to three backers. Well, one of the options was Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, but we talked about him being a former safety, probably still built more in the DB mold. He's longer. He's good in coverage, right? Well, with Oren Burks, you have a guy who can really get in there and throw around and bruise some people. And, hey, they got him especially for the special teams, right? 49ers' new special teams quarter, Brian Schneider, actually viewed Oren Burks as his top special teams performing linebacker of all the available free agents this year. So Schneider's really happy to get him. But chances are they're going to need Burks on the field, and he's out there because he can give the 49ers a little bit more thump at that linebacker position. Flanagan-Fowles, right now I have him on the roster as the fifth linebacker, but that spot is going to be challenged by a couple guys. One is undrafted free agent Jeremiah Gemmel out of University of North Carolina. I put up the captain there, but that's actually incorrect. I should edit this really quickly. We need to put the general, because that's what they called Jeremiah Gemmel in college. This guy missed a lot of time due to an upper body injury during his senior season at North Carolina. But Jeremiah Gemmel earned the respect of his teammates. And I'll scroll over to the right so you can see the 49ers collection of undrafted free agents at the linebacker position. It's highlighted there. Anytime they call you the general on any football team, you probably know what you're doing. You're probably a presence there. And if you put on the tape for Jeremiah Gemmel, he's running around the field. He's in command. He's a guy that the 49ers can develop in that Mike linebacker position behind Fred Warner. So if Gemmel impresses, porting his game to the NFL level on the practice squad, throughout training camp, wherever the 49ers can find a spot for him, I think that doesn't take up an immediate 53-man roster spot, he's an intriguing future project, especially since he's coming off an injury this past season. But with his presence on the field in college, you have to like the fact that he has the instincts that the 49ers can develop into something moving forward. Then you move to Shagun Olubi, who went to high school with Drake Jackson in Corona, California, over there in the Inland Empire, Centennial High School. Olubi is fast. We're talking 4.4 fast. So when I talk about DB backgrounds for the 49ers in that linebacking crew, well, Olubi doesn't have a DB background, but he's got DB speed at 4.4. And he's also a raw talent. This is a guy who, up until about his junior or senior year of high school, wasn't sure if he wanted to be a basketball player or a football player. And he realized at about 6'1" that basketball probably wasn't going to work out at the professional level. So he started focusing on football really late in his high school career as Drake Jackson's teammate over there. And that meant that he had to really grind his way through college. We're talking D2, junior college, NAIA, and then finally a walk-on at San Diego State, where he played really well for 2 years and earned a scholarship. And now the 49ers have picked up Olubi as an undrafted free agent. So you have a guy whose best football in Shagun Olubi is probably still in front of him, and he's really fast, which matches the MO of 49ers linebackers. And then you got Marcelino McCrary Ball. I liked him during OTAs. He's a classic nickel linebacker. He can move, he can cover. The 49ers obviously want linebackers who can move. I can tell you what, though, between Gemmel, Olubi, and McCrary Ball, it's very likely that the 49ers have a future contributor, especially since this is a position group that's coached by one of the best in Johnny Holland. And it's a very linebacker-heavy defensive staff, right? The defensive coordinator for the 49ers is D'Amico Ryans, who is a former all-pro linebacker. So you have Johnny Holland, former Packer, such a respected linebackers coach who's developed such a good track record with the 49ers linebackers. And where do you think that Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and Azeez Al-Shaair got their success from? So you have Johnny Holland working with these guys, and you have D'Amico Ryans, the coordinator, working with these guys. So it's a linebacker-focused coaching staff. And I think between Olubi, McCrary Ball, and Jeremiah Gemmel, the 49ers might have something in that undrafted free agent room. But it's, for the near term, it's more about what the 49ers have at the top. And at the top, they have Fred Warner. He's obviously a stud. We can pop open the stats again from last year just to see, across the board. Warner, even though it was a so-called down year, well, he still has 137 tackles, a missed tackle rate of under 10%. If he can get that back near 5, which is what it was before, he's going to be back in the all-pro conversation. I mean, the 49ers have a stud in Fred Warner, and they have 2 really good players in Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shaair. The key for them is staying healthy in their contract years. And then even if they don't, because this is football and you expect some guys to get hurt, beyond that, the 49ers believe their depth is now better with Oren Burks, and he can obviously help this team out on special teams. All right, so that's what to expect from the 49ers linebacker position this year. I'm going to take a few questions now since I didn't get to earlier. Margot's at the grocery store, so we're going to ask her what to get while she's at the grocery store. So if you have any food recommendations, type them into the chat section right now, and I'm going to have to send a text message here in just a second. So let me have a drink of water, send over those recommendations, and ask those 49ers questions. All right. It's getting a little parched right there. Steak tartare. I love it. I still like this ribeye tapas with roasted asparagus and broccoli recommendation. All right, we'll pass on the recommendations to her while she's out there at the grocery store. And is there anything that she should buy for later? That's a good question. Yeah, I like to cook breakfast burritos sometimes, but I've been keeping a little bit lighter in the mornings, so maybe not that. We're gonna have to grill pizzas soon, but usually I go get the ingredients at the Italian market to get the pizza ingredients, so I can't really think of what I might need at the grocery store. All right, let's talk linebackers, and maybe something will come to mind. The choice between Azeez Al-Shaair and Dre Greenlaw will come down to who has the best 2022 season. I have a feeling Al-Shaair will become more expensive. Yep, I mean, it will come down to, that's what a contract year is, right? You perform better, you get more money. So I think that, especially in football, memories have to be short. You can't pay somebody based on what they did 2 or 3 years ago to pay them based on what they just did, because that's going to project best into what they might do immediately. These career lengths are too short. It's too physical, too violent of a game. Injuries happen too often. So there's a lot of pressure on this season for both Greenlaw and Al-Shaair. How do you grade her cooking? It's really good. She makes really, really good grilled cheese sandwiches. They are world-class grilled cheese sandwiches. Also good with the fish, salmon, all these little dishes. And I think fish, it's just so important to be a little bit lighter. You can still get the protein. I think you get more creatine out of fish without just completely just lugging yourself down. So Margot does a really, really good job. Let's go up here. Hi, David. I've never seen a linebacker room this stacked. How much of this is defensive, and they may well not be able to sign Dre and Azeez next year? Who do the 49ers lose if not on the final 53? Those are all good questions. I'll make this a little bit smaller so that it doesn't block out my whole face, because that was a long question. The 49ers absolutely have tried to stack their linebacker room so that they're in position to potentially replace either Dre Greenlaw or Azeez Al-Shaair. We could look back at the room right here on the 49ers depth chart, but obviously the front three, they're very stacked. Oren Burks, they brought him in for special teams. And Flanagan Foles, unless somebody gets hurt, he might be an odd man out. He's been around for a little bit, but he's going to have to make big strides to A, make this roster, and B, hold off every single one of these guys, even for the practice squad. So, at this point, you're shooting with a shotgun. Unbelievable. I got another Amber Alert on my phone. I'm sure you guys hear that. This is the second one that's come across today, but usually these end pretty quickly. So good. It finished. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. I thought it was a fire alarm last time. It kind of scared me. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Because it never come on during a video. So that's 2 videos, 2 of these alerts coming through on the phone. I think it's one of those blue alerts coming through on the phone. So, that you can't turn those off either. So, and the phone is my camera now. As you can tell, cinematic mode on the iPhone, blurred background, everything here is crisp. So all good. We're going through the linebacker depth chart, and I was talking about Flanagan Foles and his difficulty, I think, in holding some of these guys off. Between Gemmel, I haven't even talked about Curtis Robinson yet. He was more of a special teams product for the 49ers last year. Robinson is Stanford guy, right? He's the 49ers re-signed anybody who they thought could bring a plus impact to special teams. That's how much they're emphasizing that portion of the football right now. But the flashier names are going to be the guys that we're not familiar with yet, because they have that more unknown ceiling, right? Potential. Seguno Luby with the 4.4 footer, Jeremiah Gemmel, the general at North Carolina, Marcelino McCrary Ball, who played well at Indiana. So these guys will all be challenging. They're all kind of chomping at the bit in case the 49ers can't pay both Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shaair after this next season. All right, more questions. Let's ask them. Cut off for a bit there, sorry. Back and ready to finish off some of these last questions. Do you think the choice will come down to a best fit and a possible 3-4 Vic Fangio defense in 2023? I think it's too early to be able to answer that question definitively, although it is interesting because Vic Fangio's taken the year off, going to be living down in Florida, but traveling a lot to the Bay Area. He was at a 49ers practice during this offseason program. If Vic does return to the 49ers, yes, a 3-4 might be possible, but a couple things have to happen for that. And the 49ers defense has to put on another really, really good season. If that happens, DeMeco Ryans is going to get hired away as a head coach. And if Vic Fangio is the selection, well, the 49ers will have to change some things up schematically because, yes, he is a 3-4 guy, and the 49ers have been in that 4-3 front ever since Robert Saleh took over in 2017. So the 49ers aren't going to be making personnel decisions based on their scheme until they actually know what their scheme is. And that's not going to happen until after this season. Now, if you talk about the 49ers defense playing well enough to catapult DeMeco Ryans into a head coaching job, I think there's enough talent on this defense to be at least a top 5 unit. And I think the 49ers are hoping for this to be back near 2019 levels because They're hoping that pass rush is fully reloaded now, fires at the cylinders that we saw at the end of last season, which was really good. They think their linebacker core is the best in football. And perhaps most importantly, they think their secondary is actually legit this year as opposed to a liability entering the season, especially after Jason Verrett went down. So a lot of that will determine where D'Amico Ryans goes or if he stays put. And then that, by domino effect, will determine if Vic Fangio has a chance at the 49ers DC job. Will Dre and Fred make us forget about Pat and Bo? No, nobody's ever going to forget about Patrick Willis and NaVorro Bowman. Those are two of the best to ever do it. I mean, those two guys, they were covering receivers back when linebackers still had to weigh 245 to 250 pounds. And linebackers still had some thump. Those guys were dogs. Those guys were special. Nowadays, we talk about the downsized linebacker, the downsized league. Warner, Greenlaw, I mean, these guys are in the 230s, right? And they're special. They're good players, especially Fred Warner. But Bowman and Willis, they were doing the kind of stuff in coverage that the modern linebacker does back when linebackers still had to be really big. And that's why I think Patrick Willis should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. And I think if, injury slowed down NaVorro Bowman's career as well, both of those guys, a little bit more health luck, both of those guys should be Hall of Famers. But it's probably not going to happen for Bowman. And I would hope that it happens at some point soon for Patrick Willis. Is there an open linebacker spot because Harris is gone, or was he a fill-in for the revolving Greenlaw Al-Shaair injuries? Yes, that's why Oren Burks is on the team. So they signed Oren Burks for the Packers. Marcel Harris was a big special teams contributor. Oren Burks is a special teams ace. So there's no more open linebacker spot. There was one, though, that the 49ers had filled. All right, if you guys want to read the State of the Linebackers piece that I put up on the screen that came out a few months ago, I went ahead and put that in the chat section. You can go ahead and sign up for The Athletic. Hope you enjoyed this video on the 49ers linebackers. I said these ones on the position groups would be a little bit shorter, but because the first video today was interrupted, I wanted to take some questions, make this one a bit longer. But I'm going to go through position group by position group, continue this project over the course of the next few days, make sure that you guys are on board here during the dead portion of the 49ers offseason. So thanks for joining. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll talk to you all soon. It's time to go eat some dinner. So it's going to be fun. Remember, I'm a couple hours ahead of you guys. So dinner should be good. Enjoy your Tuesdays. Let me know what you eat. Take care.